Hello everyone, welcome to another exciting community meetup. So this time we have also like amazing speakers, and this meetup is going to be like a bit longer compared to the last one. And we have like amazing sessions from all our developer advocates and Thomas, the author of .VVM itself. So let's begin the meetup. Okay, so today's agenda is basically like there will be a welcome note by me that is happening by me now, and then there will be talk by Thomas. Basically, he will be presenting on Fluent UI, web components, and how to reload in .vvm. And then the next section is by Daniel, where basically he will be presenting on dashboards and web portals to manage and promote events. And then the last talk is by Vincent, so where he will be presenting on setting up a CI/CD pipeline for .NET Core .vim web apps using GitHub Actions and AWS Elastic Beanstalk. So these are really interesting topics. Please stay till the end, and of course, like at the end of the meetup, so we will be also like giving away few .vvm premium licenses. So if you would like to get those licenses, please get in touch with me here or on WhatsApp. So I will make sure like you get the access today or tomorrow or in this week. So I'm very happy to announce that we will be conducting our mini .vvm conference in next month. So that will be on 21st and 22nd June. So for this conference, so we have opened our like call for proposal. So if you have any topic that would benefit our .vvm community, so usually the talk duration will be about for like 20 minutes, and then will be like a Q&A session. Please get in touch with me, and you can mail me if you have any topic, and then I can help you with the CFP, and then maybe we can do like a pre-recorded session for the conference. So without further ado, so next our speaker, .vvm author itself, Thomas. So Thomas is CEO of Riganti, and he's based out of Czech Republic. And Thomas is like an MVP, and also like Thomas is very active in the, like basically in public speaking. So Thomas doesn't need like much introduction. So if you can just Google his name, you will get to know like all of his talks and all of his presentations in the past. So without further ado, over to you, Thomas. Please start the session.
Okay, thanks. I will share the screen. Please confirm that you can see it. Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Awesome.
We can.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you for the introduction. I will share some things that we are working on right now with .vvm. I have basically two topics. One is using web components in .vvm because it's getting more and more popular, and all the browsers today can support the web components, so you can use them in any framework, not only in .vvm, but in any other web technology. And if you have been watching the sessions at Build, which is happening in these days, you probably heard about hot reloading in .NET 6. And we have also hot reload feature in .vvm, which partially takes benefits of what Microsoft has added into .NET 6. But we have also our own extension, which should hopefully make your developer inner loop more efficient. So you won't need to rebuild your application every time you change something in Visual Studio. In many cases, you would just see the change happening in the page right away at the very moment. So these two things I would like to share. So let's jump into this. So for those who are new to .vvm community, very short introduction. .vvm is an open source web framework which can help you with two tasks. First is if you want to build a new web application using the model view model approach, that's where you can use .vvm, especially if you love C# and .NET because it's .NET based framework. And if you have old ASP.NET Web Forms applications that you need to evolve and maintain, you can also use DotVVM to modernize these Web Forms applications, because DotVVM supports not only the new and shiny .NET Core and .NET 5 and 6, but also old .NET framework. So if your applications are still on the .NET framework, you can install .vvm in these, and you can write new pages with the MVVM approach of .vvm. Last month, or maybe it's 2 months ago, we have released .vvm 3.0, which brought several new features. And if you want to hear more about them, just join us next month on the .vvm virtual conference, because we will be deep diving in these new features and new stuff that has been introduced. And sometimes next week, we will probably release .vvm 3.1, because there is a lot of work that has already been finished. And we are just reviewing a few last pull requests that should go to .vvm 3.1. After that, we will release this version. There is also already a preview of .vvm 3.1, which you can try, but there are some things that haven't been previewed yet. So hopefully next week we will release something like a release candidate. It will be a next public preview, but we consider it feature complete. Then we have some other things that are in progress. So we are not really sure if they will be released as .vvm 3.2 or 4.0, because we have one very interesting and very nice feature almost ready. And we think that if this feature gets completed, it will deserve another major version of .vvm. So that's why we are still considering the number of the next version, but it shouldn't be very long until this is released, because one big feature is almost completed. So that's a lot of things you can look forward to. And Harry, if you are interested in what's coming in .vvm 3.1, I have a few slides about that. So in .vvm 3.0, we introduced a support for Lambda expressions in data bindings, and we added JavaScript translations for select and where, because anything you use in your value binding expressions needs to be translated to JavaScript by .vvm. So this expression can be evaluated on the client side in the browser. So we supported only select and where methods, but in .vvm 3.1, we have added a lot of other link methods that you can use in your value bindings for a lot of things, like, for example, client-side filtering. You can load all the data to the page and then allow the users to search or order these data just on the client side without any communication with the server. So it can be useful in some scenarios. And you can also use things like distinct or any all, which can be used for enabling or disabling buttons based on other conditions in the page. So it can help in a lot of scenarios, and we are very interested in how you will be using these features and what other ideas you will get from using these, because this can really help to be for .vvm to be more powerful on the client side. Also, we have added translations for methods on list and dictionaries. So if you have lists or dictionaries on the page, you can use, for example, static command to manipulate with these collections. So if you want to create task list where you can just add items in the collection, you will be able to do it from the static command. And also, because this will be translated to JavaScript, you will be able to do it without the client-server communication. So also it will be more powerful. You can also remove items, insert items at specific places, and clear the list. We have added several custom extensions that are not present in the .NET list collection, because you might want to do some more sophisticated operations like, okay, here's a collection, so I need to look up some item based on its key. And if it's there, I will just update this item. And if it's not there, I will want to add it. So there is our own extension method called add or update, which you can use on the list. And it can also be translated to JavaScript. So if you need any kind of add or update logic, it's what you can use. And there is also the dictionary extension. So if you have dictionaries in your view models, you can use these functions. So you can use the indexer to read and write values. You can use contains key remove or clear. Yeah, so this will be present in .vvm 3.1, and we hope that this will help you to avoid sending the view model to the server and getting the modified view model back, because right now you can do some things just on the client side without writing JavaScript code. There is also some syntax enhancement in data binding syntax, because we just need to parse this expression and translate it to JavaScript. So we have added support for type inference in lambdas. So now you don't need to explicitly specify the type here. You can just use C or any number or any name. And the arrow and the lambda expression body, because now .vvm can guess this type from the method declaration. We wanted this to be in .vvm 3.0, but we didn't make it in time. So now this feature is already finished. So it will be released very soon. And you can also use string interpolation. So if you want to substitute things in the string, you can use this $, same as in C#. This is just re-implementation of the C# feature that you can use in your view models. So now you can use it in your binding expressions as well. And we have other improvements from some weird historical reasons. If you have been using file upload component because of old versions of Internet Explorer, this component was rendering an iframe in the page, and when you choose to upload some file, this upload was done inside the iframe, because otherwise the page would be in some kind of weird state where it's being sent to the server. So that was the reason for the iframe. But now, since we are supporting only IE11 and all the modern browsers, we don't need this. So right now, this file upload feature is using XML HTTP request, which can work with files and which can send the file on the background while other actions and other server-side communication is happening in the page at the same time. So this is just a removal of one of the historical relicts we had in the framework. Also, if you are making a postback or other server call, which takes for some longer time, then we now can cancel this request once another request starts. Yeah. So if you are triggering a command, which takes a few seconds, and while this command is still waiting for the server response, the user starts a different command, we can cancel this HTTP request. And there is also a cancellation token in the view model. So if you are doing some large time-consuming asynchronous operation, you can use this cancellation token to cancel this operation prematurely. So this can save some server resources. Because if the request is too long and the user doesn't even want to finish this request, you can the server will be notified about that and can cancel this long-term action. And we have also spent quite a lot of time on refactoring of the .vvm command line interface. There is a command line which you can use to for example, generate a .vvm project from the command line, or you can generate REST API clients for .vvm, so .vvm can then consume REST APIs. So we have done internal refactorings in this feature because it will allow us to improve the IntelliSense the reliability of IntelliSense in our Visual Studio extension. And also we have one feature we wanted to ship a very long time ago. Basically, it allows you to generate user interface Selenium tests, that kind of test that can run the browser and click on the elements in the page and make sure everything is working. And but we need to get the configuration of the .vvm application so we could generate these tests nicely and correctly. So that's why we needed the new CLI. So it's if you have been using REST API bindings, you will probably not see any kind of difference because the CLI will work the same way as it before, but it will be more reliable, and Visual Studio extension will be able to get some metadata about your application to provide better IntelliSense. So let's look at the first experimental feature. It's not part of the framework yet. It's kind of work in progress. But the good news is that it doesn't need any changes or tweaks in the framework. So you can use it. Because it's just a NuGet package. It doesn't need to change anything in the framework really. So it's a nice kind of extension. So basically, the idea behind this feature is to speed up the developer inner loop. So you can, when you change the code in Visual Studio, you don't need to recompile the application, which takes a few seconds. And then if you refresh the page in the browser, the application will restart. So it's additional 2 or 3 seconds for small apps. And this complete loop can take 10 seconds for very simple apps. It can take even higher tens of seconds or maybe minutes for very large applications that do a lot of different things during the startup. So for every change in the code, you need to wait 10 to 20 seconds before everything is recompiled and restarted. And it's just bothering because it takes a lot of your precious time. And with hot reload, we want to everything happen in less than 1 second in the ideal case. So how does it work? Few days ago on the Microsoft Build conference, the .NET 6 Preview 4 was announced, and it supports hot reloading in the .NET runtime, which means that if you change some C# code of your application, there is a new button in Visual Studio, which is called something like Apply Code Changes, and it won't just recompile the entire application and restart the process. It will just connect to the running process, and it will replace some pieces of the code. So the process is still running, but they can update the code inside the process while the process is still running. So the application doesn't need to restart, which will save quite a lot of time. And you don't need to recompile everything because typically you change only a few methods or something like that. So you don't need to recompile everything. So that's one of the nice features. And basically it just compares the method bodies. And if some method was changed, they will just supply the new code in the running process. So this is what makes this work, and you can just change your code and have the changes applied immediately to the running process without the need to restart. And that's the first part, because if you change something in the view model, that's what you will need to do. If you change something in DOT HTML files in the view, then we had some kind of hot reload already, because when you change the DOT HTML file, you don't need to restart the process. You can just refresh the page, and the .vvm will detect that the file was changed, so it will recompile the view automatically. However, you still need to go to the browser and refresh the page. And if you have changed anything in the view model, then you lose the changes. So if you are working on some feature that you need to do 2 or 3 clicks in the page before you can see the part of the page which you are working with, it's still inconvenient because you need to alt tab to the browser, refresh the page, and then do the clicking, repeat the clicking basically. So we can, thanks to this package, we can refresh the page automatically once the view file is changed. And also we save the view model state. And once the page is reloaded, we restore the view model state. So the page will be in the exactly same state as it was before it was refreshed. So it will make a lot of things easier. And when you are changing this this file, it means you are not touching the C# view model. So the view model structure cannot change. So this should work in most of the cases. Yeah. If you want to try this, we have a demo here on this link, but it's kind of difficult to set it up right now because you need a preview version of Visual Studio and you need a preview version of .NET 6. And it's not targeting .vvm NuGet packages. You need to build .vvm from the source code. So I will show you the demo, but I recommend to wait some time because we will have easier experience once this is out of preview. So I have my application here. It's Northwind Store. So oh no, the wrong window. This is the correct window. So it's our demo application that shows how to use Entity Framework in .vvm and how to use how to create CRUD applications. And I have, for example, this categories page, and I want to do some changes in the code without restarting the application. So let's move this to one half of the screen. And this is the code of the application. I will make the code a little bit bigger. And so I'm on the category detail page, and I want to change the category description, for example. And yeah, so I have changed the text. And when I click on Save Changes, I'm getting an error because I made an error in my code intentionally for the demo purposes. I have this check if the category description starts with the letter A, it means that I will be throwing an exception. So that's what I want to get rid of. And I can, you can see the application is running. I have the debugger on, and I can just change the C# code. And when I click this fire icon, apply code changes, the changes will be automatically applied to the running process. So the process of the web application is still running. There was no restart. And when I click on this, the action is immediate because they just replaced, they took the new version of this method and injected it in the process. Yeah, so once you are changing the method bodies, this will work and it will be, the change will be immediate. I can revert my changes. So once I go there, you can see I can go between the pages immediately because I'm not restarting the process. So when I try to save, I have the error again. Yeah. So let's fix the application. I don't want this code to be here. Apply code changes, and now I can save the category. So that's what happens when you change the view models. You need to have the application targeting .NET 6 because this feature was introduced in .NET 6. And this button is only present in the preview version of Visual Studio. So if you want to try this, you need the latest preview of Visual Studio. Otherwise, this icon is not there. And if you want to change something in the DOT HTML page, or sorry, the Visual Studio extension doesn't work ideally in the preview version. We still have some bugs we need to fix. So you are looking on the markup of this page. So I can do any kind of changes here. So I can say hello. Oh, wrong key. And when I save the page, you can see it reloaded immediately, and you can see this change here. Yeah, so I can, oh, sorry. Oh, what happened? These are just preview bits of Visual Studio and also preview bits of the .vvm extension. So there's two reasons for not working actually. So I can, and this is also a nice bug. I noticed it yesterday. I have removed the comment, but the inside of the element is green. Once I do this, it will fix. I don't know. It seems like an issue with Visual Studio. And you see that I have added this panel and it appeared here. And everything should work because I can now filter. So I will filter for the letter C, and you can see that I'm changing the state of my page. Now, when I decide to remove this panel again and refresh the page, you can see that the filtering panel disappeared, but the state of the page remains unchanged. So I have now the items filtered by what was in the previous version of page. So because before the refresh, the .vvm view model is stored in the local storage of the browser. And once the page is reloaded, we just take the view model state and apply it here. If you refresh the page, of course, you will get the clean state. Yeah, but if you are just working with .vvm and writing code, anytime you save it, the page gets refreshed and it will just work. So this is what you will have in the next versions of Visual Studio once we have .NET 6 out of preview. And for the view reloading experience, you also need to install a NuGet package, which will be called .vvm.diagnostics.viewHotReload, this one. But right now I don't have NuGet package for it yet. I'm just using project reference to the source code. It's already on GitHub, so if you want to inspect the source code, you can. The link is in the repo, but we will provide a straightforward experience for this. So once you create a new .vvm project, this will be already configured in the future versions. So that's View Hot Reloading. It's a very nice feature, and I hope that it will speed up the development of .vvm apps very rapidly. So let's go to the other feature, which is even more interesting than hot reloading, because this opens a lot of new possibilities for .vvm developers. Web components is one of the standards on the web in HTML, which basically it's not a single standard. It's a combination of few features of the web and the modern HTML. And basically, it's an API which you can use to just define your own HTML elements, which are understood by the browser. Yeah, so you can introduce your own HTML element, and browser will know what this element means and how to handle it. And the second feature, which is used by web components quite heavily, is a shadow DOM, document object model. And basically, it means that for these custom elements, you can provide the browser what you want to render. So you can create your own, for example, button element. It can be called my button, my awesome button, of course. And then you can provide, by JavaScript, you can provide the browser what should be rendered for this element. Yeah, so that's a very nice concept, because it allows you to just import one script in the page, which will tell browser, okay, if you see this element, do this. And then you can use naturally plain HTML elements, and they will render something. So for example, I will be showing a demo of Microsoft Fluent UI. It's a set of components Microsoft is using in their own applications, and they have a web components version. So anytime you use just Fluent Select, it will render a nice looking drop-down list control, and these will be the options that will expand inside this control. But this JavaScript just tells the browser, okay, if you see this element, do this. And if you see this element, do this. And you can set attributes to these elements, and you can use data binding with .vvm for it. So it will be very natural. And these components are basically framework agnostic. So they don't rely on .vvm or React or Angular or on any other framework. They can be used everywhere, which is the greatest thing, because the component developers will be able to write the controls just once, and you will be able to use them in any web framework you want. So it means that anyone can implement, even you can implement your own custom elements, and they live directly in the browser. It's not just some transpilation like .vvm does. If you write dot::button, .vvm will translate it to something the browser already knows. But this is about extending the set of HTML elements with something that the browser doesn't know, and you provide your custom behavior to your custom element. Yeah, so that's very nice, and .vvm can use it because I will be showing the demo of Fluent UI, which is originally written in React, but since they are porting it to web components, it means that you will be able to use it even in .vvm. Yeah, so that's what's great about this, and because it's just native HTML element which is living in the browser, we can use all the goodies we already have in .vvm. So if you have a .vvm page and you will use the Fluent button element, it will look like the Fluent UI button because the JavaScript, the piece of JavaScript you include in the page, it will tell browser, okay, if you see this element, render this. But you can use the data binding because the Fluent button has the text property, so you can take your view model value and bind it to the text attribute of this custom element. And because the JavaScript for this control will look at its text attribute, so if it sees some value, it will just use it as the text on the button. And we also have a generic event handlers like events.click. So the Fluent button doesn't have the click event, which is on the normal .vvm button, but you can use events.click, so it will render the onClick attribute on the button, and it will also work. Yeah, so you can use the data binding on these elements, and this will provide a lot of functionality. There are some limitations. For example, if you use it on a control that also changes the value of some attribute, then you need a special binding, so it will be two-way. This will work only from the view model to the component, not the other way. But we have already implemented this kind of binding, so that's why it will be possible. Yeah, we have implemented this kind of extension or extension property that allows you to two-way bind to a Fluent UI web component. Yeah, so that's one of the things, and you will see the demo in a few minutes. And in .vvm 4.0, we will introduce a better way, a simpler way to build your own controls. .vvm simplifies a lot of things, but if you decide to write your own universal controls, you might find it quite difficult in comparison to other frameworks. And we've decided to change that because writing your own controls should be really easy. So we have introduced a new way how to write controls. It's almost finished, so we will be releasing a preview of this feature very soon. But and you will see it in a few seconds. And this method is not great for all kinds of controls, but if you want to create a wrapper over a web component, so take few parameters and render some kind of HTML, or if you want to compose control, your own control from existing controls, then this method is very nice and very easy to use. Yeah, so that's what you can do. You can inherit from a new class which is called composite control, and instead of overriding the init load pre-render methods and building the control tree inside, you can implement a static method which is basically a factory for the control itself, and this method gets some parameters and they will be treated as .vvm properties, so it will be quite easy. It's basically a class with one static method you need to implement to define your own control using this way. So I will show the demo. If you want to try it yourself, it's here on this URL. I will share the slides in the chat after I finish speaking. So let's see the sample. First, let's look at what the Fluent UI actually is. Fluent UI is a set of components. They have about 50 or 60 components, and you probably know them because Microsoft is using them in their own applications. Even here in Teams, you can see some kind of buttons which are from the Fluent UI. So if you are using Azure or Office 365 or anything like that, you have probably seen these components. So I've created a very simple page where I have a select control and a button. So this is the styles which come from Fluent UI. And if you look in the .html page, you can see that I have just imported this script. And now I'm using these custom elements. And these don't have any prefix. These doesn't start with dot. So it means that these are not translated by .vvm to something else. If you look in the developer tools, you will see that there is a Fluent Design System Provider element. It's a native HTML element. It behaves like a normal HTML element. And the Fluent UI JavaScript just gave meaning to this element using some special web components API. Yeah, because we have loaded this script, it means that the browser will know what to do with this element and how to handle it. Yeah. So .vvm doesn't need to do any transcription here. We just are setting the background color attribute based on some kind of property in the view model. So if I have dark mode turned on, the background color will be black. Otherwise, it will be white. And I have the Fluent select control, which has these options. These are not bound from the view model. These are just static because it's just a demo. And I have a Fluent button, which when I click on it, it will just invert the dark mode property. It's a property of Boolean. Yeah, so it will just toggle between true and false. So I will be switching from the light to dark mode. Yeah, and if you try it, you can see right now dark mode is off, so it's false. That's why the background color is this one, the white. But if I change the property in the view model, I'm using binding to the Fluent UI design system provider. So the background color will be changed, and all the Fluent UI controls are written very cleverly. So based on the background color, they will calculate other colors that are used there. So you can see that now the text is black and the background is white. But when I switch the background color, the foreground color, the text color, will be calculated to be clearly distinguishable from the background color. Yeah, so that's what's very nice on the set of these components. You can implement a dark mode basically on with one button and one line of code. That's what's very nice on this. Yeah, I have more samples for the Fluent UI components. So there you can see they have buttons. They can these badges, just a small element with some information inside. They have a checkbox, they look like the default checkboxes, but they are more accessible because they are larger. So even on touch screens, they will work a little bit better. They also have the switch control, which have this nice animation. So if you prefer this kind of user interface, you can do it. And it's very simple. It's just one line of code in the Fluent UI. They have radio buttons, which are also optimized for touch. So they are a little bit larger. They have text boxes, which are basically normal text boxes, but they are styled. So they look a little bit better. And they have the slider control, which is also quite nice. You can define minimum, maximum, the step. And there is the progress bar or ring progress bar. And the select, we have already seen it. So that's nice. They have cards, they have accordions. There's a lot of other components. How this looks like? You can use the native syntax, which is commented out here. So I can use Fluent button. You can select if it's the primary button, the accented button. Yeah, so that's this blue one. Or if it's neutral button, which is this gray one. And I can bind the click events on it. And of course, it's a little bit boring and you don't have IntelliSense because the Visual Studio cannot read the JavaScript code and discover what kind of elements are there. But thanks to the easier way to write controls feature, thanks to the composite control, we can implement these .vvm equivalents. And once we have the support in the .vvm for Visual Studio extension, then we will have IntelliSense. Right now, it just displays the list of controls we have, but it cannot discover the properties of these controls right now in this version. But we are working on this. It shouldn't be very difficult to introduce. But of course, this syntax will be very natural for .vvm developers, and we can do this. And it's because of the easy way of writing wrappers over native HTML elements. So for example, I have the button control here, and you can see it. The control itself is very short. It's just a few lines of code, and there is a lot of ceremony here. But basically, it derives from composite control, and there is a static method called getContents. And basically, every parameter of this method is a property of the control. So there is the text property, the click property, appearance, and content template, which is if you put something inside the Fluent button element, it will be matched to this content template. And the only thing the method needs to do is to return a control tree, which represents this control. And because we have the web components, we can just emit HTML element Fluent button and just take these parameters and substitute them here. So I'm creating a Fluent button element with the appearance attribute, with the click event handler, and with the text property or its content template. These are extension methods that will be shipped together with this feature. They will make this very easy to use. They will probably be named differently, but still, for basically these 4 lines, allow .vvm to define this element and to implement this button. And once we have support for this in the Visual Studio extension for .vvm, then we will have proper IntelliSense for this. Right now, this is underscored because .vvm is not aware of these properties which are declared in this way. Yeah, because basically .vvm extension cannot recognize this syntax yet. Yeah, and we have other controls. So there is a badge, there is a checkbox, which is very easy to use to just bind a Boolean property to it. You can put the text of the checkbox inside of the element or to the text property. Yeah, and we have the switch. So if you want to exchange the checkbox for the switch, it's just changing one word. The rest is really the same. Yeah, so between this and this, the only difference is one word, nothing else. And we have the radio button group. So if you want to offer multiple choices, you can do this. And we have text field and text area from the Fluent UI. So it will be nicely styled, and it will support the dark mode, etc. And we have the slider, progress bar, progress ring, which is this round. And I'm binding these to the same value, so they are synchronized. And we have the select. This is a little bit interesting because you can just render this element, but if you want the items to be bindable, you can use, wait for it, the repeater control, because what we are doing here, we just have this wrapper, and inside this, we generate this Fluent option element for each member of the collection. Yeah, so that's what we are doing here. So we can use a repeater. If you set the wrapper tag name to Fluent select, this will do the trick. And because we don't want to use repeater, if you want to use select, we can just write this control, which is a wrapper over the repeater. So the getContext method gets the data source, item text binding, item value binding. It will allow you to render a text and treat some property of the object in the collection like a value, and the selected value. You need to, because of the data context changes, you need to have these attributes, but still it's not very different from the previous way of building controls. And basically this is returning a new repeater, and wrapper tag name is Fluent select. And for the items, we have this template, which says for every item, render this Fluent option with the value equal to the item value binding and with the text equal to item text binding. And basically that's it. Yeah, so this is how we can easily build wrappers for the Fluent UI. So it will take quite short amount of time to provide nice looking bindable .vvm wrappers for these Fluent UI components. And also it means that if you find any other package of web components, you can write these classes and to make your life really easy. So that's what why I'm so thrilled about web components, because right now these controls, which provide quite complex behavior like the select, for example, yeah, to implement this in pure JavaScript, it's very difficult to do it. And you can use the default drop-down list from the browser, but it doesn't look very nice. It doesn't work with the dark mode very nice. So this is much better, but to implement it from scratch would be very difficult. With this, with the web components, which was written by someone else, it's as easy as just rendering an HTML element. So this wrapper is very simple. Yeah. So that's the web components. It's a very nice thing, and you can look forward to this feature in some of the next versions of Visual Studio. Probably, sorry, of .vvm, not Visual Studio. We are not responsible for for Visual Studio releases. Yeah, and as well allow you to create nice looking apps with a very little effort. So I'm thrilled about this quite a lot. And also a last thing, last week we have released the new version of .vvm documentation. So if you haven't seen it yet, just go to .vvm.com/docs, and there's a new structure of the pages with better you should be able to find your things find answers to your questions more easily than before. So that's also what we have released last week. That's it. Here are some links, and I will post the link to this presentation to this session chat. So stay tuned. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Thank you, Thomas. So that was a really good session. I can't wait to see the recording and try once again. So if you have any questions, feel free to like ping us here or on WhatsApp or wherever, wherever you are comfortable. We would be happy to answer. Meanwhile, I'll just share my screen.
Hello.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hi. Thank you for that presentation, Thomas. I'm really excited about the web components bits. Those UIs look really good. I will definitely try it out myself. I mean, I can imagine building dashboards or forms and just being able to use that straight out of the box. Also, hot reload. Can you talk to us about how hot reload works under the hood and the performance implications? So, for example, I know when hot reload preview for Xamarin was implemented, it really was impacting resource usage. So I noticed that when I'm debugging an app with hot reload, my system basically freezes a lot and all of that. So what is the performance implication for when hot reloading with .vvm?
Oh, okay. So there are two parts. One which is if you change the C# code, and Visual Studio will just recompile the method and push the new code inside of the process. I don't think it will bring too big overhead, because but it depends on the size of the method. I think that in Xamarin and in XAML-based technologies, the problem is that the XAML page is translated to a very long method which builds the controls. Like if you would build them in C#, yeah, for every element you will need few lines of C#. So these methods are very long. Maybe that's the reason why it's more resource consuming. But in .vvm view models, I don't think there will be so large methods. But it's still in preview, so a lot of things can change. So I cannot I have made it working yesterday because they released the preview 2 days ago. So right now I don't have any better answer But this is still part of the .NET runtime. So even if it's performance heavy, there is not many things we can do in the .vvm team. In case of the reloading, when you change something in dot HTML files, then .vvm has already been doing this, because if you change the dot HTML file, the process is running and you refresh the page, .vvm will grab the new dot HTML file and recompile it automatically. This hot reload is only removing the manual step that you need to go to the browser and reload it. But still, if the page is not very long, I think if it has less than 1,000 lines, it shouldn't be so bad. It really depends on how complicated the page is. But what you can do at any time, you can, if it gets slow, you can just restart the process, because it will clean up all the mess that has been caused by this. Yeah, and you will start with the clean process, because this will fix itself once you restart the process, because it will be recompiled without all the old versions of the methods, old versions of the screens and things like that. So I don't think it will be so significant problem, but it depends. If the application is very complicated, if the methods are really long, then the overhead will probably be there.
Thank you, noted.
Okay, any more questions, please? If there are no more questions, then we will move to our next session. Thank you, Thomas, for the session. We are like very happy to have you, and hopefully we'll see you in the next conference. So our next speaker is our very own Daniel. So Daniel is .vvm developer advocate. So he's basically based out of Ecuador, and he has been doing workshops virtually all over the globe. And today, so Daniel will be speaking about dashboards and web portals to manage and promote events. So over to you, Daniel.
Hey, thank you. And hello, everyone. It's a whole pleasure to be able to be here to talk about .vvm controls. This is a special section, in this case, to show you dashboard and web portals to manage and promote events. You know, to have .vvm in action in this case and show you some demos. So in these little minutes, we will see that. Okay, I will share my screen. Um, and let me see. Okay, with I hope you can see that.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Yeah.
Okay, in this special section in .vvm Meetup, usually we talk about .vvm controls. Today, I take this opportunity to talk you about the .vvm controls that allow you to work in forms, you know, to enter data, and others to show items on collection list. So in this case, we will see two demos in this way. So um, we will start with this first site, building a dashboard. Usually in applications, for example, we can find CRUD operations to build anything, you know. And in this case, .vvm is based in the model VVM model pattern, and thinking in this way, and remember that, remember, the model, for example, in this case, is responsible for all application data, for example, to manage the data, the business logic, and these paths. In the other hand, we have the view, for example, for representation of the end user application model, and displays the data, allowing manipulation of information from the user and these things. And in the other way, you know, the model view or view model to represent implemented the behavior to respond user actions and is responsive the model data to the view. So in this way, into account the model view model parent, we can build our applications in .vvm. And in this case, I will show you the first demo. The first demo is building a dashboard with ASP.NET and .vvm. And in this case, we can consider, for example, the CRUD operation, no? Create, read, update, and delete. And I will show you that. If you want to see the entry process, there is an article in C# corner that you can see, and also the source code. So we can see this project now. Okay. This project part from the database. In this case, this project use a PostgreSQL database, and in this case, the example is to manage the user data. I have this from here. For example, in .NET, we can use relational databases and only and also NoSQL databases. In this case, there is in PostgreSQL, SQL, sorry, only one table to make CRUD operations. So let me my Visual Studio run. It's loading here. And in this case, we can find three parts in the one hand, for example, to connect with the database with Entity Framework, and also services and models to work with this data and represent this in the views and view models. So let me wait only a second. This is the first time that my Visual Studio is taking more seconds. Okay, a little more. Only one more. This type of things usually happens when we are in a live, right? Okay, the demo is here. And in this case, as I mentioned, thinking in the model view model parent way, we can find, in this case, the data access layer with the data context, in this case, for example, to represent our entities from the database. In this case, for example, it's only table in the database, the table person and its attributes. And in the DB context, the relation with our project and the database through Entity Framework. And in the BL, the business layer, we can find the services that allow you to have operations, CRUD operation, in this case, to get the data and give the operations. So in this case, the important thing is the things that we can find in the views and the view models. For example, in this case, talking about the .vvm controls, in the one side, we can find, for example, forms. And in forms, for example, to create a new user, in this case, we can find, for example, text box, buttons, and this type of controls. And this is the HTML site. And for example, if we can represent, for example, the username, the first name, last name, entry text, we can use, for example, in this case, .vvm control called text box and represent its data. No, in this case, in the part of the view, and in the view model, we can represent this data. For example, to create, we can have a model in this case is, let me see. Okay, user detail model. User detail model, for example, we can find these attributes: ID, first name, last name, and all others. And here we can define, for example, the method to add user, in this case, called the business layer, to insert, for example, a new entry in the database. And here, let me back in operations, we can specify that. And in the views section, reference with these attributes in this way. For example, in this case, and that is text box for username, for example, but we can, for example, adapt this text box for enrollment date in a date way, and for example, put some attributes, for example, um, disabled this control that for no entry data and other things, right? And in the other hand, we can find, for example, in this size the button to call the add user and send the entry forms in this case. In other side, we can find, for example, only for show attributes. In this case, for example, we can in this form um, show the attributes in this case, and in another attribute in all attributes show that this attribute is disabled, that not allowed to entry data. So let me run this project, but for you can show in a better way. Okay, this is running. In future, we can use the, in real time execution. In this case, this is the dashboard. For example, this is very useful because we can adapt this dashboard in other scenarios. And this is practically about CRUD operations, right? For example, in this case, the options that we can we seen previously, it's about the form to enter the data, right? For example, in this case, we can show an example. And okay, insert user. And this is the part to insert. Here we can have a list of items about the collection of user registers in the database. And this functionality we can find in this site. For example, there are other controls. In this case, one of them is a grid view to represent a list of elements from a collection. For example, we can find in the site the users collection, and this user collection is defined in the view model section in this site. For example, we can find here the user, in this case, the type of list of user list model. An interesting thing is the binds in .vvm about directions. For example, we can put or specify that our collection is the server to client, but not there are no actualization, for example, to client to server, for example, and this optimize our processing. For example, we can find other options. For example, client to server, or the server to client and client to server too. And this is, for example, bot or node. But in this case, is server to client because it's only to show a list of elements in this case. And we can initialize this in on pre-render section, for example, an user. And in this way, we call to the business layer to get all users and represent this in this collection. And in the view, sorry, here in default, use this .vvm control called grid view, passing this collection in the data source. And in this .vvm control, we can specify the columns of our table, for example, in this case, for example, to show the ID, the name, the country, the city, and the enrollment date. And also we can put or write the grid view template column that is, for example, to in each record, for example, show a button to go, for example, to the detail section and do other operations, right? And this is very useful .vvm control to achieve this goal. So this is, for example, in this case, the dashboard we can personalize for any scenario. I don't, okay, this is running. Let me show you again. Okay. Only a second. Okay. This is the list. Oh, the list is here. And this is, for example, the custom detail. In this case, for example, the grid view template column in this case. And there is a route link to go to the other page in this case. As I mentioned to you, we can adapt this dashboard to any scenario, and this is the other example. In this site, we can find other demo to manage, for example, web portals and promote events. That is, for example, the next thing. In a first way, for example, register and manage the event data, for example, the speakers, the sessions, the information about the event. And in the other portal, we can have, for example, show the event data to the general public. And all of these part from the database. For example, in this case, we can find the event, the organizers, the sponsors, the speakers, sessions, and the type of the session and levels too. And for example, in this case, the technology that supports this platform is, for example, in the first case, the database. In this other example, we can use SQL Server, ASP.NET 5, the last version in this case of .NET, and also .vvm to represent the views in this case. In this demo, there are other articles and also an articles that unified these platforms. You can find this also in C# Corner and in Medium, for example, the .vvm in Medium and Dev2 and the source codes of the event admin and event portal. So let me show you in this case the first application, event admin. The event admin or the proposal of the event admin is to manage this data, right? And in this case, the database is in SQL Server, but in Azure through the resource called Azure SQL Database. In this, there are the tables here, for example, for the event. In this case, this application have been used in real scenarios, for example, for previously events and the informations, for example, for session speakers, sponsors, and these cases. So the project is here, and we can have the same structure considering the model view model pattern. And in this case, I will run first this project that allows you to show you this demo in a better way. Okay. It's running. And this is a dashboard too, but adapt to event admin. For example, in this site, we can find, for example, the organizer of the events, the speakers too, and have CRUD operations. For example, see the detail, edit this speaker in a form, and also, for example, delete the registers, and also we can see the list of collections. In this case, for example, this is using a grid view 2, and this is, for example, the event admin. For one event in particular, in this case, we can adapt this platform to admin other events. For example, I have in the business layer one class. Let me check. Okay, event ID. And event ID, for example, this is the ID number 1. This event, for example, Virtual Summit 2020. And in the second ID event, Global Azure, for example, and if I can, if I change that here, now I can admin the other event. Let me show you. Okay. In this other event, there are other organizers. This is Ludin. And okay, other speakers and other information in this particular event. This is about dashboard to admin event, but there are other projects, in this case, to show that information to general public. And this is event portal. Let me open this other solution in Visual Studio. Okay, only a second. Current solution, okay. And in this case, we have the same format: model viewer, model parent, considering 3 projects: data access layer, business layer, and presentation layer. In this case, presentation layer is with .vvm. And let me run this project too. Okay, in the seconds. Okay, this is from one event. Let me translate it in English. Okay. And in these sections, for example, we can find the sessions of the events and sessions per day. And also, for example, the organizers of these particular events, the sponsors, and other attributes that we can put in this case. And this is very useful, for example, manage in this way, because, for example, if, let me stop this. For example, if we manage in a admin portal, we can refresh these changes in a real time, because let me go in this way. This is the event 2 here. And in this other window, I will open this other event. translate to English. Okay, I will show you an example. For example, if I put other sponsor here, we can go to the admin portal in the section to sponsors. And only a moment, create other sponsor. For example, I will put Meetup, .vvm Meetup, .vvm Meetup, and poner the page of .vvm here, and only thing, add a sponsor. Okay, the sponsor is here, .vvm Meetup, and I can refresh this other page. In a real case, this is globalazureecuador.com. And you can see here, for example, .vvm Meetup. And how can achieve this goal? How to show these automatically items in this page? I go back to my project event portal in Visual Studio, and in this case we can find other .vvm controls. For example, I show you quickly in this way. In the default.html, the intention is only show data about the event. And in this case, for example, we can find .vvm repeaters elements to represent data. For example, in the case of the sponsors, it's here. For example, we can represent a list of sponsors, to call the business layer and also the database in this time, and represent a list of sponsors. And in this case, write the .vvm repeater. In this case, we can represent an item template, for example, to show the web page, a link, and also a logo. And for each element of sponsors, in this case, we can represent these items with this control. And in this case, for example, of this particular page, the principal control is .vvm repeater. For example, in the case of sessions, we can find here a calendar, for example. There are two templates in this case. For example, one template to represent the days. For example, let me translate it again. Okay, for example, in this case, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, this is a template per days. In this side, for example, number of day, and we can put other repeater inside other repeater. In this case, for example, to write other template to put, for example, in this scenario, the sessions, the list of scenario, the list of the sessions, putting for example, the name, the speaker, the type of the session, and also the time, the hour of the session on this day. So this is the example in this case about .vvm controls. Let me back here. You can find these articles in a detail, step by step, to organize this and all of these demos, and also available for all of you on GitHub. And this is the example for today about .vvm controls. I really hope you like it in this case. Sorry for my terrible English too. I hope you understand the message. And if you have questions, it will be a pleasure to be able to help you. And that is for other projects in future, we can use, for example, the power of .NET ecosystem. Currently, I working in other articles, for example, to deploy our application for example, in a virtual machine on Linux, and also in .NET we can find more features. For example, ML.NET to work with machine learning, and for example, in .vvm we can in a certain way work with this because we can present the data, and in the coming weeks we can see all something like that. And in the future we have other projects. For example, in .NET we can work with Internet of Things. For example, Olosubomi, I think it's present here. We have a pending project to show demos from Internet of Things. So in the coming weeks, we can see something like that too. And in this case, I don't know if there are questions.
Thank you, Daniel. Can't wait to see your new cool demos, as in like basically with IoT. Yeah.
This is the future. So okay, thank you in this case. And I take this opportunity to show my social networks. If there are a question in the future, of you, if you need help, it will be a pleasure to help as well. So thank you very
Thanks.
much for the invitation.
Yeah. So if anyone have any questions, feel free to ask now because we will be moving to our next session. And feel free to like post it in on WhatsApp or here, wherever you are comfortable.
Thank you, Daniel. That was a very beautiful app. Is there anywhere we can, so is it open source or maybe a stripped down version of it? Is there anywhere we can take a look at, especially the UI, how you did the UI? Is there an article or your GitHub or something that you can share?
Yep. In the articles are in .vvm community. For example, in Dev2 or Medium, you can find us medium/.vvm on Dev2 as well. And in these articles, the links of the repositories to these projects are included. So we can find in these platforms. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Daniel, thank you so much for your session. As always, like we are happy to have you. So right now, like we are now moving to our next session. So our next session is by Vincent. So Vincent is senior software developer based out of Africa. And to be precise, he's based out of like Lagos, Nigeria. So basically, Vincent's expertise is in ASP, Netcore, and .vvm. And Vincent is also an Microsoft MVP as well. So Vincent will be speaking today on setting up a continuous integration and continuous delivery pipeline for a .NET Core .vvm web app using GitHub Actions and AWS Elastic Beanstalk. So over to you, Vincent.
Hi guys, Vincent here. So today I'll be speaking on setting up a CI/CD pipeline for your .NET Core applications and .vvm applications with GitHub and Elastic Beanstalk. A lot of developers, especially when working on their own personal projects, we like to just do manual deployment and all of that because of the time it can take to set up CI/CD pipelines. But I will be showing you a really easy way to set that up. If you haven't started using GitHub Actions too, this is a very nice introduction to GitHub Actions. And a lot of people, I find that a lot of people haven't used AWS Elastic Beanstalk too. So that is, it's also a very good way to get introduced to it. I will be using the .vvm application as the demo app here, but you can use the same process with any .NET application, even if it's not .vvm. I'll share my screen now. Please let me know when you can see my screen.
Yes, I can
Yeah,
see.
we can see it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so the title really is setting up a CI/CD pipeline for .vvm for .NET Core .vvm web app using GitHub Actions and AWS Elastic Beanstalk. So for people that don't know what GitHub Actions is, so GitHub Action is really it's kind of task automation. It's like using Jenkins or Team Foundation Server, just a very stripped down version, which allows you to take some actions on your code, either when you push code or when you do a pull request. It can build your code and test it and do some initial work on the code. You can set up GitHub actions to either reject a pull request on some criteria or to automatically accept it. There are really no limits to what you can do with GitHub actions because it's all code. All right, and then AWS Elastic Beanstalk. A lot of us as .NET developers, we are used to using Azure, so a lot of people are used to using Microsoft Azure. AWS Elastic Beanstalk is kind of like Azure App Service, but I find that it's a lot easier to use most times, especially when you're doing automation, and it's much easier to automate around. So what we're going to be, so the CI part of this talk. So CI means continuous integration. It means you're putting code into your repo and you're testing, you're building and testing that code as it's going into your repo. That's CI, continuous integration. And CD means continuous deployment. So it means you're setting up your system in a way that immediately code goes into a repo or into a specific branch, and all your checks pass. You're pushing it to an environment automatically so that it's available on the web. Now, we probably would not set up continuous deployment for production environment, because for production environment, you want to manually take changes there sometimes. So maybe in your development environment or your test environment, you might set up continuous deployment. So immediately you push to a test branch or a development branch, the code just goes up there. So what we're going to be looking at today is creating an application. We're going to create a .vvm application. Then we're going to create an AWS Elastic Beanstalk service where our code is going to go. We're going to create a repository. So this repository will serve as the connection between the application that we created, which is our source code, and EBS. So this is going to be like the glue that connects them together, the man in the middle. And then we are going to have to add some authentication keys, because now we are saying we want to take code from our repository and put it into AWS. And for that to happen, we need some kind of authentication between our code repository and AWS. So we are going to put our AWS keys in our GitHub repo. I'm using GitHub, but you can do this. Okay, because we're using GitHub Actions, we have to use GitHub. So we're going to put these keys in our GitHub repo. And then finally, we're going to add the GitHub action that is going to basically be in charge of picking our code when we push it and build it and send it to AWS. This is going to be a very hands-on talk, like a workshop. So if you want to follow along and you have an AWS account, you can just fire up your AWS account and just work with me. So the first thing we're going to do is to create a .vvm project. I am working on the Mac here. So instead of using the Visual Studio, I will be creating a .vvm project from the command line. Right now I'm in my repos project. I already had some of these commands, so I'll just scroll up. To use .vvm, I have an article that lets you use, that teaches you how to set up .vvm on the Mac or Linux environment, so where you don't have Visual Studio. I will go to Medium just to show a link to that article. So I have an article on my Medium, which is also on the .vvm's Medium. So if you go to .vvm's Medium, Daniel mentioned, you'd see how to set up to work with .NET Core on either Linux, .vvm on either Linux or Mac OS. So basically, you have to install the templates for .vvm on Linux. I think because the latest version of .vvm is 3.0, you can replace this asterisk with 3.0.0. I will update this article later. So you run .NET new i.vvm.templates, basically to install those templates. And after installing those templates, you are now free to run .vvm commands on your command line. So I can say .NET new .vvm and give it a name. For this, I'll say demo approach. And you see that I am now creating a new .vvm application. I can now go into this application. I'm going to open it in Visual Studio Code. .vvm also provides you with a .vvm template for Visual Studio Code. So if you search for .vvm on the extension, you will find, why is this not searching? You will find Thomas's extension. I think I should just use the browser. .vvm with VS Code. So this is the extension. You can download and install it, or you can install it directly from Visual Studio Code, and it gives you syntax highlighting for .vvm. So that is the process of creating a .vvm application. And now I have the same application structure. Just in case you hit the same bug I hit when you're trying to do this, you can come into your CS Proj and change this NetCore app version. So I don't have .NET Core app 2.0 on my system again, but the default template will create this for you. So you can just come and change it to 3.0 and it runs without any problems. Well, I'm not going to use this project because I already created a project we're going to use. I'll go ahead and close this. This was just to show you how to get started. I'll go back into, so I already created a project which I called .vvm AWS deploy demo. I'm going to open it up right now. And this is really just a standard .vvm project, right? I did not, because the priority here is really to show you how to deploy. It's not to update the code or anything. I'm going to run this project so we can confirm that it's working on the command line. Working locally, sorry. So we have it on port 5001. And we have hello from .vvm, so our project runs. The next thing we need to do is to create a GitHub repo, which I already did. This repo is public on my GitHub, so if you need to check anything, you can simply go into this repo. For this repo setup, it's just a basic repo with the gitignore set to Visual Studio and MIT license and all of that. And the next thing I did was push this project to this repo. If we come back to our to-do list, we have the create application part. The next thing to do is to create an Elastic Beanstalk service. I am going to go to my AWS account now to show you how to create an Elastic Beanstalk service. And this is my support center. So when you come to AWS, you can either search here for the product or you can come here. Because I have used Elastic Beanstalk a lot, I have it on my favorite here. But Elastic Beanstalk is a kind of compute service. And that is because behind the scenes, Elastic Beanstalk is actually running EC2 instances. So it's running EC2 instances with Amazon's custom AMI. I'm going to click Elastic Beanstalk here. And I already created, because this can take a while to create, so I already created one here. But nonetheless, I will go through the process of creating a new one, so it's just very clear. So when you want to create a new one, you can do this from the command line, and you can also do it from the portal. For this demo, we'll be doing it from the portal. I'll say create a new environment. You can either select if it's a worker environment or if it's a web server. So if you have long running tasks or maybe a clone job or something, you can just use a worker environment. Or for this demo, we can just use a web server environment. Click select. give your application a name. I'll say demo.vvm2. Then environment name, I'm going to say demo.vvm2 and you have to take note of these names because we're going to need them later. For the domain name, I'm going to add this. We can add a description, and then we can select what platform we want to host on this. So you can host any of this. For us, we're going to host .NET Core on Linux because it's cheaper. We don't have to pay any Windows Server licenses here. And we have 2.5 .NET 2.1.5 here. I'm going to let it deploy a sample application for us, and I'm going to say create environment. Why do you have validation error? Okay, I am not sure why it failed to validate the first time, but we now have this environment creating. While it's creating the environment, I'm going to go back to GitHub Actions and talk about GitHub Actions very quickly. So GitHub Actions basically allows you to interact with your code, do some processing on it when you push it into your repo, and the way to access it is really here. So you can come to Actions, and you can come at a new workflow here, but a lot of times it's I prefer to work on it from my source code. To add a GitHub action to your project, you need to add a new folder called .github to the roots of your project. And within that project, you add another folder. Within that folder, you add another folder called workflows. After adding workflows, you can add as many actions as you want in here, and GitHub will run all of them. Now, the actions are YAML files. So I have my YAML file here. I'm going to go through the structure of this YAML file for those that are for people that are not used to YAML. So you can give it a name. I have the name build test deploy here, and I have on. So on means when should I run this project? When should I run this action, right? And I'm saying run this action when code is pushed to the branch called master. I can add more branches here, and I can say run it when the code is pushed to dev, when code is pushed to test, and when code is pushed to prod. But for now, I'll just leave it at master. I can say run this code when a pull request is opened. And I'm saying when a pull request is opened to master, run this code too. I mean, we wouldn't do this in production, but this is a demo. And then I have one job here. I say build test deploy, and I need to tell GitHub where to run this code on. I'm telling it to run it on Ubuntu, on the latest Ubuntu version. I'm telling you to set up the environment this code should be run in. I'm telling you to prepare to run this in the .NET 5 environment. And then from here, I can start to interact with my code. The first thing I want to do is to do a NuGet restore. So you see I'm saying .NET restore, and I'm giving it the name of my CS project to restore. This runs a restore. This runs a build without a restore because I already did restore here. The next step is to publish. And the way we publish, we know how to publish to a zip file with .NET. So I'm going to publish to a zip file. I'm going to publish to a folder called web. And then I'm going to use a Linux command. Remember, we are running this on a Linux, so we have the full range of the Linux commands available to us. That's one of the powerful things with GitHub Actions. I can open SSH ports. I can pull things from different places because suddenly I have a full computer to interact with. So I'm going to use a zip tool to basically zip that folder into, with my build file into a folder called web.zip. And then I'm using a package. Now, the powerful thing with GitHub Actions is that anybody can write a package and push, and you can use that package from your own GitHub action. I am using a package called nasm/getTimeAction. So what this package really is supposed to do is to get the current time. But when I deploy to AWS, I need each deployment I make has to have a unique ID. And what I am doing here is I am using the current timestamp that I am pushing this as the unique ID to AWS. So I am using someone's package. I'll just open this in my browser so we can see the package. Just Google it. And this is the package I am using. So you can write your own packages and put them on GitHub and describe how people will use them. So I'm using that package here to get the current timestamp. There are other strategies you can use. Remember, once again, we're running this thing on a Linux box, so we can literally do whatever we want to do. But I like to use this one because it's very convenient. And then the last step, if everything succeeds, the last step is to take that zip file that I have created and actually send it into our Elastic Beanstalk instance. For that, I am using another package. So this is another package that does that for us. So to use these packages, you can really just come to the GitHub repo and read the documentation. But this is a very simple one. All we have to do is to provide a key. So this key gives us access to AWS, to our AWS account. A secret, which gives us access to the AWS account too. And then the application name. If you notice, I created a new application called .vvm demo 2 and .vvm demo environment. So you put that's application and environment name here. You have to put your AWS region. And then this version label, you have to tell AWS what version, what's the version number for this application you're deploying. I am getting this from this step. So I have the ID version here, which is why I am saying, okay, get this input from the steps, because this is a step, the step named version, the outputs from that step named version, and give me the time. So that is what I'm using as my version label here. When you're working on a structured project, you probably want to use something like semantic versioning or do a proper type of versioning. But right now we're just using timestamps. And then I need to tell it what package should it put in this web app. And I am just giving it web.zip. And the amazing thing is all I have to do is to give it web.zip, and AWS will figure out how to unzip it, which folder to put it in, how to configure the reverse proxy and all of that. So, and that really is all we have to do here. But before we proceed, you might be wondering, where do we get this secret key and access key from? The way to get that is to come to your IAM in AWS. So to reach your IAM, you just come to your username. So come to my account. This is taking a while. So if you come to your account, you're going to see all of these details here. If you scroll down a bit, so this is the access key for this account, and AWS really doesn't let you see the secret after you have generated it. What you can do if you don't already have a key, you can just create access key and get in your access key, get the secret and save it somewhere else before you proceed. Because once you generate it, if you don't save it, you have to delete and recreate a new one. Once you have the keys, you can put the key directly into your source code here, which would be very terrible. For example, if I had my keys here, you would be able to see it right now. But the recommended approach is to come to your repository. So you can either store that key at your repository level, or if you're using GitHub, GitHub for Teams or GitHub Enterprise, you can put it at the organizational level. For this, we're going to put it at the repository level. So we're going to come to settings. And here we see secrets. So I have AWS access key ID and AWS secret access key. I can come and say new repository secrets, and I can say demo secrets and just put some random characters in here and add secrets. And suddenly this secret is available for me to use from my GitHub actions, which is what I am doing here. So I'm saying for the access key, take this from the secrets, and for the secret key, take this from the secrets. And once we have all of this ready, we are ready to run our application. I am going to just do an edit to this page so we can see that something changed. And I'm going to push this to master. Okay, so now when we push to master, we can go into GitHub and see our action run in real time. If I come to GitHub and I go to actions, I can see this action running here with the last commit message. So if I click that, I can come in here and watch the steps happen. So right now it's just preparing to start. Now it's setting up the job. So one of the first things it did was to download the external actions we're using, and then set up .NET Core, basically installed .NET in the Ubuntu virtual machine and all of that. So this is, and then now it's running that .NET Restore. Now it's running .NET Build. It just finished publishing into the CS Project folder. And then it zips the package. So it basically just zips. These are, you see all the files are PDBs and all of that. And you can configure how you want this to be zipped here. I'm basically just zipping everything. And then I got a version number. So this is a version number. And now it is deploying to Elastic Beanstalk. This succeeded, and we can now go and check our web app if it works. So this is the one we deployed to. And we have the link URL here. If we open it, we see now we have hello from .vvm on AWS, and that's a very, very super simple setup to deploy your apps. Say you have personal projects or really small projects, even if it's not personal project, you can set up this flow, or maybe you can even use this as your development environment to quickly test things. So that's a really another good thing with this is that you have historical versions, so you have all the versions. If I come here, let's see if I can remember where that is. Okay, so if I come here and say upload and deploy, I can actually upload the zip package directly. If I come here and I say application versions page, now I can see all the versions that I have deployed. I deployed one just to test before we came on this. Okay, if I switch back to this previous version, you can even download it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here and say deploy. So I want to deploy the previous version before my last deployment. I'll just go ahead here and say deploy. And let's see this happen. This is a very fast way to roll back. And we see it has rolled back to the previous version. I'm going to go in and replace it again. and we see it's back. So if we update our source code, all we have to do is push to GitHub on master or something, and we have it ready to test. So that's it. It's just a really quick session on configuring GitHub Actions and AWS with .vvm or .NET Core. Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. If anyone have any questions, feel free to ask now. And it was a really good session because I've been having some questions regarding that. Maybe I will try later evening. I will ping you regarding that. And if anyone have any questions, feel free to ask now or here on WhatsApp, wherever you're comfortable. And for those of you who have joined late for this meetup, so basically, like I wanted you to say about this .vvm mini conference we will be having on 21st and 22nd June. So, like I'm happy to say, like we will be accepting CFP. So if you have any topics related to .vvm or any topic that would benefit .vvm community, please write mail to me or Thomas or Vincent or any one of our campus ambassadors like Olasubumi. We would be happy to help you on that. And looks like we have come to the end of the session. And feel like basically follow us on our social media pages. So it's /.vvm on all of the media pages, like medium.com/.vvm, facebook.com/.vvm. So we would be happy to help you there. And like if you would like to join our WhatsApp group, get in touch with me. So I will add you in my WhatsApp group. And thank you, Thomas, Daniel, and Vincent again for basically presenting so much about these topics. So some of them were like a bit technical. And Vincent, like next time we will make sure that we will announce it a bit earlier regarding the hands-on so that people can follow you when you are doing the workshop. And all right. So thank you all for joining. We will see you in the next conference on 21st June. Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye and take care. And Abdul, thanks for organizing.
No problem. Yeah.